Hi everybody, my name is Robert, I'm an alcoholic. I'm the Director of 12-Step Programming for Granite Recovery Centers, and I'd like to introduce you to the 12-Step process. At Granite Recovery Centers, we are really proud of our 12-Step immersion process. We believe that it is what sets us apart from all other treatment centers. And the way we do this is we take people through a book titled Alcoholics Anonymous. And in that book, we find tools to use to help bring us closer to a higher power of our understanding and reach us into a state of recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. So when we do this, we start at the beginning in a chapter called The Doctor's Opinion. And this is where we're introduced to step one. Step one says that we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And to introduce people to that concept, we have something we call the model of addiction. The model of addiction and its points are derived completely from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the Doctor's Opinion was written by a gentleman named William Duncan Silkworth, who treated one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when that founder came back to Dr. Silkworth and showed him this program, Dr. Silkworth was amazed, because back when this book was written, we were cast aside. We were locked away. We were put in asylums. We were lobotomized. We were left to die because we were what are considered mentally defective. And at Granite Recovery Centers, we believe that that is further from the truth. That we are human beings on a spiritual journey, and introducing people to that journey is what we're all about. So in the Doctor's Opinion, Dr. Silkworth explains that we have a threefold illness: mind, body, spirit. And we believe that if we don't treat all three things equally, that it is incomplete. And the reader knows that Alcoholics Anonymous believes that we will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery in this book. Everybody wants to know what the doctor has to say. And in 1939, Dr. Silkworth was the doctor. So let's get into it. Dr. Silkworth explains to us in the beginning that he personally knows scores of cases who believe that they were the type in whom other methods had failed completely. And when we're looking at a spiritual program of recovery, we have to look at what have we already tried. Have we tried going to different treatment centers? Have we tried just going to meetings? Have we tried just moving away or changing our lives, but missing a certain component that we just can't describe? And for a lot of people, when they think about that, they have tried everything else. So why not try this? It appears to be of medical importance because of the rapid growth that was inherent in Alcoholics Anonymous. They marked a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. Alcoholics Anonymous changed the face of how we look at drug and alcohol treatment even today. And it's really important that we bring this book into this century. So the first thing Dr. Silkworth tells us is that we have an allergy to alcohol. And when we break down the word allergy, when we look it up in a dictionary, there's a definition in there that says an abnormal physical reaction. In 1939, they had no medical proof. But today, in the 21st century, we do. We know now that the brain of the alcoholic addict reacts differently when they take in substance than somebody that does not have alcoholism and addiction. Now, we have in every brain, in the midbrain, is the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is the pleasure center of the brain. It was what signals the release of dopamine. That dopamine communicates with our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for stop. So when people are out having a good time with their friends and they're at the bar and they have a couple of drinks, some people may say, "Ooh, I better stop. I'm starting to feel it." Because that dopamine is being released, and the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of fight or flight, is saying, "Hey, you better stop or you're going to die." But for somebody like me with alcoholism and drug addiction, when I take that drink, my nucleus accumbens sends out dopamine at an exponentially higher rate. And that communication gets skewed. And what ends up happening is my my brain says, hey, if you stop, you're going to die. Fight or flight is just different. That is the most common abnormal physical reaction. And Dr. Silkworth is going to call that the phenomenon of craving. See, even the medical doctor, if you're in a big book and you're looking at the doctor's opinion, he says that the subject presented in this book is of masterly detail. He has many years' experience at the most prominent hospital treating alcoholics and drug addicts of the time. And he realizes that some form of moral psychology is of urgent importance to alcoholics, and we believe that here too. But its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. As an alcoholic addict in recovery, I can tell you that I have had many a time where I have sat down in front of a therapist but wasn't 100% honest. Even though I know I should be, I wasn't 100% honest. And with our ultra modern standards and our scientific approach to everything, we're perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge, because it's deeper than just being removed, right? It's deeper than just being removed from my substance of choice. And Dr. Silkworth starts to recognize that after he has to send so many people off to be locked away, to be sent away. And the doctor says that we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol and drugs on these alcoholic people is the manifestation of an allergy. That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. That phenomenon of craving happens when I ingest drugs and alcohol. Once I start, I can't stop. And suddenly, the alcoholic addict is in this compulsion where they're now drinking or getting high against their own permission. That's what a compulsion is. An unquenchable thirst, you hear it called. One's too many and 100's never enough. There are so many expressions that outline the compulsion, but at the end of the day, it is a complete lack of control over the amount I take once I start. And the thing about the phenomenon of craving is that it's progressive. It gets worse over time. So it's tricky. Some of us will take a drink and we don't start drinking every single day. Some of us will start with one substance and find our substance of choice, and then one substance leads to the other. We don't have control over the amount we take, and because it's progressive, sometimes we think we have control and it leads to still less control. It's a chronic condition. The phenomenon of craving, the allergy to drugs and alcohol, this abnormal physical reaction, is something I am always going to have. Other chronic conditions include type 1 diabetes, chronic pain. It's just something that is continuous, something I'm always going to have, and it is terminal. We cannot poison our bodies for very long before it starts to take its toll. And we see it happening time and time again. There's no treatment for the phenomenon of craving. And what does that mean? That means that once I have entered into the phenomenon of craving, there is nothing that is going to take me out of the phenomenon of craving. It means that I do not have something that's going to take the allergy out of me. There's no treatment for the phenomenon of craving. A perfect old wives' tale. If somebody drinks too much, they say, just drink some coffee. That's not how it works. There's no treatment for the phenomenon of craving. The only thing 100% works every time to avoid the phenomenon of craving is to abstain from the thing that I'm allergic to. And it's really hard to abstain from substance without another solution. I'm primarily, as you see at the bottom here, in the phenomenon of craving once I've ingested substance. I am clearly powerless over what happens to me when I take a drink or a drug. And When you go to certain fellowships, they will say things to you like, just don't drink no matter what. You've been removed, so just don't pick up again. And if it was just physical, that would work. If it was just physical, only taking medications would work. If it was just physical, treatment centers like ours would not need to be open. Yes, I'm powerless over what happens to me when I drink and get high, but we don't talk about as much or think about as much is how powerless I am when I don't drink and get high. Let's see what else the doctor has to say. The doctor says that these allergic types can never safely take alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit, we find that we cannot break it. Once having lost our self-confidence, our reliance upon things human, our problems pile up and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. That is a very important term. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they're to recreate their lives. And I think that we should focus on recreate their lives because we want people to recreate their lives. We don't want people to go back to the lives that they had that created so much turmoil that they turned to a drink or a drug that led them to us in the first place. We want people to be properly armed to be able to recreate something beautiful in its place. And it goes on to talk about how if people are wondering why we feel so strongly about this, the doctor says, let them stand with us on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become part of their sleeping moments, their daily work. And even the most cynical will not wonder why we have accepted and encouraged this movement. And that's what not only Alcoholics Anonymous was at the time, but that's what Granite Recovery Centers is. It's a movement. It's a fellowship. It's a camaraderie. And if anybody ever wonders why, you just have to look at the children, at the parents, at the spouses, the friends, the employers. Anyone can really increase the list. But frothy emotional appeal is those things in the mind of a chronic alcoholic. Over on the left-hand side of the model, we see the mind, an obsession. An obsession is a persistent and recurring thought that is stronger than and does not respond to reason. The people that we see at Granite Recovery Centers have every reason not to pick up the thing that they picked up, and they pick it up anyway. The mental obsession comes with these strange mental blank spots and this peculiar mental twist, this subtle insanity. In the halls, you'll hear it called the built-in forgetter, where once we start to physically feel better, we start to forget how bad it got, and we start to forget the things that brought us into treatment in the first place. And we start to say things in our own voice like, I didn't get that bad. I know what to do this time. I'm fine. It is insanity. And it's also episodic. The mental obsession comes and goes. We have people that will come to us with many complaints, with many reasons why they need to leave treatment right then and there. And in a short 24 hours later, they'll come back to us and say, I don't know what I was thinking. It comes and goes. And what we can do is talk people through that obsession and wait for some clarity as people start to see the insanity of their thinking. Once I stop, I can't stay stopped. If you know somebody, or if you yourself have been to treatment multiple times, if you've stopped drinking or getting high and you continue to just pick up time and time again, that is the mental obsession. That is what happens when I'm removed from the substance. And once I stop, I can't stay stopped. I don't have a choice. The mental obsession is going to come in whenever it wants. I do not have a choice. And if I'm not properly armed, I equally don't have a choice of whether or not I will pick up that drink or drug. It is progressive. Folks, I'm here to tell you, it doesn't always look like I want a drink. It looks like I need to get back to my children. It looks like I need to get back to work. I need to make money. I have these court dates. But all of that stuff is what the doctor just described as frothy emotional appeal. The mental obsession is stronger than any human bond of affection. And the hard truth is, if our children could keep us sober, then they would. I will look at people on a daily basis and I will say, you knew you had those children before you picked up that drink or drug, and they didn't stop you then. Why are they going to stop you now? Many of us in recovery have watched these substances take our family members, our friends, and that still doesn't keep us away because the mental obsession is stronger than that. The mental obsession lies to us. If your person in recovery has ever said to you and promised you, I promise this is the last time, this is it, I'm done, I'll never do this again, just to do it again, it wasn't a lie. Those of us who have been through the ringer will tell you that we meant it when we made those promises. The problem is we have the mind of a chronic alcoholic addict that is lying to us. There's no treatment for the mental obsession because of the episodic nature. We can just sit, talk it through, and hope for that moment of clarity. But the mental obsession is primarily occurring in sobriety. And I am powerless over the mental obsession and when it comes in. There is a line in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it says, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Wow. What a novel idea. But in the sense of the alcoholic illness, the sensation is so elusive that even though we admit that it's injurious, we admit that it's harming us, we admit that something's wrong, we cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To us, our alcoholic life seems to be the only normal one. This is just the way we do things. This is just the way life is. You hear it all of the time, and those of us who have gone through this have felt it all of the time. They are restless, irritable, and discontented. Which brings us to the spiritual malady. Mind, body, spirit. I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. The clinical term for RID, as we call it, is affect regulation. Affect regulation means basically that I am preoccupied with how I feel. Emotions are negative and positive. And what we most commonly think about in respect to addiction and alcoholism is negative emotions. Right? I drink and I get high to forget the bad emotions, to forget or not feel sadness, anger, worry, depression, post-traumatic stress. All of those things live in the spiritual malady. We also don't talk about positive emotions. Happiness, elation, excitement. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced. To mask the negative emotions and to enhance the positive ones. The world at large is restless, irritable, and discontent. This is not limited to just alcoholic addicts. People have traumatic experiences. People have things happen to them. People have long, hard days. Perhaps some of you watching this right now will go home and pour a drink and have one or two and leave it at that. The spiritual malady is also progressive. So in the beginning, it's little stuff. And then it just compounds into bigger things. And as the doctor described earlier, our problems pile up and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Bills, troubles, breakups, deaths, all of these things happen. And the people that can drink in moderation can go home and unwind with a cocktail. The doctor says that I drink for a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks that I see other people taking with impunity. But once I succumb to the desire, as so many people do, when I go home and I want that cocktail, if I want that thing, as so many people do, for me, the phenomenon of craving develops, and I'm right back into the physical craving for drugs and alcohol. The phenomenon of craving develops, and I enter into the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, back into the mental obsession, where I'm so sorry and I'm making all of these promises and I love you so much and I'll never do this to you again. Please give me one more chance. I'll go to treatment. And then I get to treatment and it's a big place and there's a lot of people and some of these people don't use the same substance that I do and I take myself apart from them. And I call you and I say, please come and pick me up. Don't listen to these people. Come and get me. Because then I immediately enter into the spiritual malady, which, yes, happens primarily when I'm sober. This is repeated over and over, and unless a person, the doctor says, can experience an entire psychic change, there is little hope for his or her recovery. So you'll see here that this item in the model of addiction is in fact treatable. There's a renowned psychiatrist from the day, his name was Dr. Carl Jung. He defines this psychic change as a complete change in ideas, emotions, and attitudes. When the attitudes of this person are cast to one side and a completely new set of conceptions begins to dominate them, we can start to recover. And that is the responsibility of each alcoholic addict in recovery to find for themselves. And when we do that, we can start to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. We did not in 1939, nor do we have now a cure for alcoholism and addiction. I introduce myself as a grateful, recovered alcoholic, which means I'm not cured of alcoholism. I still have the physical allergy to drugs and alcohol. But the thought processes and the motives behind my relationship with drugs and alcohol has completely changed. And that's what we at Granite Recovery Centers want to help people create. Through prayer, meditation, different aspects of recovery to find a new way of life, a design for living, because that's what this book is. This book is an instruction manual for a new design for living, because recovery is not just being removed from substance. Recovery is a complete change in my lifestyle. And we want to help people cultivate that change through connection to a possible higher power, through connection with each other, through connection with a good clinician, through connection. Because that is the opposite of addiction. I'm powerless over what happens to me when I take a drink and the physical compulsion, and I'm powerless over the mental obsession. And the way I try to manage my emotions is severely unmanageable. Unmanageability does not necessarily mean that I woke up under a bridge. You could live in a cul-de-sac and your life could still be unmanageable because you are trying to manage your emotions with something that you're allergic to. And until we can come to terms with that and try to exact change and really admit to our innermost selves that we are powerless over alcohol and drugs, that our lives have become unmanageable, we are destined to be in the same cycle. So the choice is yours. Join us.